go through to your settings, sonar settings, and go all the way down. Just toggle down to your installation. When you get to your installation, you'll pick up this. Then you'll toggle down 3 times, down to the unknown. It'll always say unknown unless you've already paired it or someone's paired it for you. Then there'll be a whole lot of different transducers. On every transducer cable, you'll have a silver tag on the, just before it enters your screen, you'll have a silver tag on your transducer cable, and that will tell you one of these numbers. And yeah, from there, you just press enter, and that'll bring it up on your transducer type. Press save, and then you'll get the most out of your transducer. Like, without that, you'll probably be running your transducer at about 70% odd. But yeah, as you pair it, you'll get 100% out of your transducer of the capabilities of the transducer. How Sounder works. Pretty much, straight off a transducer, sends an echo beam down, and whatever that picks up will transmit back to your sonar unit and interpret it into arches or...
As well as giving you a good bottom reading as well, and we'll talk about hardness and whether you're over a soft bottom or a hard bottom. We'll tell you how to distinguish between the two on your Lowrance units as well.
Yeah, with fish arches do exist. With a fish arch, a lot of the time you'll only get half a fish arch or just a little line on your sounder screen. Well, that's because, generally speaking, a transducer beam is in a conical shape to the bottom, and if a fish isn't going straight through that transducer beam, dead center, and going all the way out to the back, so you've got to be going pretty much straight over, dead center, over a fish to get a perfect arch. So down here you'll notice there's a lot of half arches and then maybe one full one. That's only because you're picking up small portions of the fish, like a head or a tail, or it's coming in the beam and out of the beam, so you're not really picking up full boomerang, so to speak, which is pretty normal.
That's right. So depending on what type of fishing you're doing, if you're doing your snapper fishing out in the bay, and you're really idling around nice and slow, there is a greater chance of picking up those full arches, because you will be essentially, the fish will generally sit and feed on the bottom, or they're just sitting in a formation, and generally you will pick up whole fish. Whereas if you're fishing for pelagics or you've got a school of salmon underneath the boat, a lot of times those fish are moving quickly, and you'll just pick up bits and pieces or partial arches, and that's why they don't come up as clean boomerangs, so to speak. And also the size of the cone depends on the depth that you're fishing. So the deeper the water, the bigger the cone, and the shallower the water, the smaller the cone. Therefore, the area that you're scanning underneath the boat varies as well. So transducer angles, as I said, we've got a good side-by-side comparison of 83 kilohertz versus the 200 as well. So 83 is generally for your deeper water, and 200, and it throws a wider beam as well. And the 200 throws a narrower beam, but I find that the 200 gives you greater clarity. So as an example, in 10 metres of water with a 200 kilohertz beam, you're covering, or the water coverage is about 11.5 metres, whereas with the 83, you're actually covering 30 metres. So it's a far wider beam. So we'll start with the sonar interpretation. What we've got here is essentially we're on anchor at Western Port, and we've got a burley plot underneath the boat, and you can clearly see a snapper's come in to the field of the sonar beam, and it's just come up to the burley plot. And that burley plot will just continue to sit there the whole time. It fluctuates slightly depending on wave movement and things like that, but essentially it'll be underneath the boat the whole time. We've just got a couple more screenshots we'll just quickly fly through. So depending on the speed that you're travelling, depending on the size of the fish arches and the shape can vary. So for example, this could be a school of barramundi, school of mulloway, or even a school of snapper if you're idling or just drifting over really, really slowly. That way, the slower you are, the more coverage you've got, and the longer the arch will be. Just some more sound shots. Okay, so interpreting bottom. The easiest way I can describe it is essentially looking at the return that you get from the bottom. The smaller or the narrower the bottom return is, the softer the bottom. So if you're fishing over sand or mud, that beam will essentially hit the bottom and just be dispersed. Whereas with a hard bottom, you'll get a nice thick yellow return, and then that beam will really bounce back off the hard bottom. That's the easiest way to distinguish between the two.
Okay, with your sensitivity and gain, you've got to adjust your sensitivity and gain to the to what water quality you're fishing most of the time. In this shot, there's too much sensitivity, so you're just picking up, a lot of clutter, way too much colour. Then you back it off to around this, and then you should ideally get this if it's too low. This is just your happy medium. You're still picking up a bit of clutter, but it's a lot better quality picture if you just get it to that right sensitivity setting, which is usually around. I run it about between 65 and 75. I find is your happy medium pretty much to start off with.
Yeah, generally we start our sounders on about 70, and then if I'm fishing clear water, I'll be able to crank that up to about 80, 85 some days if I'm fishing real deep, real clear. If I'm under 5 metres out in the reefs off Williamstown or Black Rock, we might turn it down to about 62, 63, especially if a lot of wind, a lot of rain, we'll just get a lot of clutter in the water. And that way you just need to adjust your sensitivity slightly every time you go out in the water, just to get the best out of your sounders. Yes, Greg?
So you don't use auto gain?
No. So it's personal preference, but we prefer to run the sounders 100% manual. So we don't do any fish symbols, no fish arches. We'll run that in manual. Run my depths in manual mode. I'll select how deep I want it to show, and I'll also run my sensitivity on manual as well. I'll adjust that every time.
Okay, structure scan and down scan. Now, this is the new style, so to speak, of sounding. It's not a traditional 2D sounding. It's an actual structure, a 3D mode, so to speak. And there's it's a side scan pretty much. You can side scan 240 feet either side of the boat, and
And have a three-dimensional view of the bottom as well. So you can have a side-by-side. So you can essentially have a side-by-side comparison of your traditional 2D sonar and your down imaging now as well. So we'll show you guys a lot of screenshots later on of, in the past, I'll say in the past, but even now, a lot of guys who use traditional sonar, if you're fishing lakes, freshwater lakes like, Eppalock, Eildon, stuff like that, you go over a bunch of trees and you see a lot of arch-type shapes, and you'll think, a lot of times guys will think, there's a lot of fish down there in the trees, but what we can actually show you with the down imaging, we can actually show you the clear layout of those trees and actually see if there's any fish hanging in those trees as well.
gives you a really clear separation of what the fish is. You'll even see actual trees and actual shapes in the water instead of just a whole lot of clutter, pretty much.
Or just lots of tightly bunched.
Plato speaker.
Yeah, we'll explain it in a tick.
So you